Greetings, fam. DubskiDude here. I come to you all today with good news and better news. The good news is that the channel has officially surpassed 2,000 subscribers.
It only took 11 years. Yay!
And the better news is that it is now story time, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Now, some of you may know what it's like living in a small town where interesting activities are rather few and far between and making your own fun borderlines on mandatory. My cabal of degenerate chums and I would often roam about, climbing on things and causing minor mischief, like a pack of wild chimps. On one such occasion, we were nosing around a particularly run-down part of the city because we were on a mission. We were in search of the legendary Hobo Nest. One of the boys had allegedly discovered this fabled location a fortnight ago, so off we went to see it for ourselves, trekking through suspicious territory towards an ominous, abandoned building. The structure was comprised of 3 floors and a basement, and it was made entirely out of black mold, meth residue, and pure unadulterated depression. My friends and I approached the entrance, which lacked a few distinct qualities of a proper doorway, like an actual door, which it did not have. My guess is that it must have noped the fuck off its own hinges because, much to the surprise of literally no one, the building's interior was absolutely terrifying. Once inside, you couldn't see 3 feet in front of your own face. Most of what you could see consisted of broken glass, assorted garbage, and even a discarded pink umbrella, which in my mind was 100% guaranteed to be an SCP. The gang and I became acquainted with the first floor of the building, but most of us had no desire to move even 3 feet away from our only path of escape due to the likelihood of being attacked by a rabies-infected troglodyte armed with a syringe full of his own piss. We were the intruders, we had entered his domain, and him using his remaining 4 teeth to rip at our throats is a course of action I'd honestly expect from someone who's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and living in a murder tower. Fortunately for this video, one of my friends was eager to get this potential tragedy moving along. I'll refer to this friend as Red. You see, Red is smart, real smart, and he had a plan. Instead of just facing the prospect of being ambushed in the dark by a Neanderthal wearing a trench coat packed full of pigeon organs, he instead wanted to face the prospect of being ambushed in the dark by a Neanderthal wearing a trench coat packed full of pigeon organs and climb down an empty elevator shaft barehanded, and not in that order. Let me break this down for y'all. There I was. Simple college student and humble man of the world, surrounded by a bunch of dillweeds who felt that investigating an abandoned building filled with God knows what was precisely how they wanted to spend their weekday. And now, one of us appears to have acquired a bona fide death wish and is currently shimmying down an elevator cable that is almost guaranteed to be structurally unsound and or coated with industrial grease. What could go wrong? The answer, ladies and gentlemen, is nothing. But despite that fact, I want you all to picture that one scene from I Am Legend where Will Smith's dog contracts crippling ADHD and runs straight into the most pitch-black den of fuckery known to man, complete with bloodthirsty naked vampire people standing around in a circle mumble-rapping to one another, just wishing that a motherfucker would. Go ahead and take that scenario, but trade the celebrity for a ginger hipster who, ironically, also has crippling ADHD, as well as a parkour obsession and a distinct lack of common sense. Thankfully, Almighty Zeus had decided that it wasn't Red's time, and he emerged from the basement in perfect condition. So that was one bullet we dodged, and the next logical step, of course, was to safari our way towards the second most dangerous spot in the immediate vicinity, the Hobo Nest on the top floor. I'm sure the potential pack of feral hominids living up there wouldn't mind if we just showed up. So the gang of intrepid young sleuths climbed their way up a few flights of stairs, past rows of rundown printing machines that could have very well been made in the 5th century, and on the uppermost floor, they were met with a sight to behold. Situated in the corner of the room was the Hobo Nest, made up of a couch, a few worn blankets, a plastic bowl containing a handful of assorted coins and unopened maple syrup packets, and dozens of empty bottles of Cobra malt liquor. Fortunately for our bodily integrity, the Hobo Nest did not include any feral savages. Whilst nosing through the hobo's inventory, we inevitably came to the conclusion that snooping around the den of a homeless person, who quite literally had nothing to lose aside from a lice-infested couch and 57 cents in loose change, wasn't quite worth having one of us potentially getting de-brained with a pea syringe. And trading a surplus of rat turds and asbestos exposure for sunlight and fresh air was likely the best idea we could have had all week. But on our way out, something caught my eye. It was a tiny orange bottle containing a handful of suspicious white pills. It was no doubt the hobo's treasure, his most prized possession, like a pile of gold hidden deep within a dragon's lair. It could have been LSD, or PCP, or THC, or the CDC, but it might as well have been covered in herpes and baby blood because I wasn't about to touch that shit. The gang and I proceeded to get the absolute fuck out of that disaster of an establishment, but alas, my dear listeners, that isn't quite where the story ends. Enter Kujo. He's a part-time bush kitten and full-time stupid. The man's built like an ox, weighs more than a third world country, has the perkiest nipples I've ever seen, and he comes complete with kung fu grip and a beer belly solid enough to crush a man's skull from a distance of no less than 50 paces east on a Sunday. Sometimes I don't even think he's human. And to top it all off, Kujo ain't the sharpest crayon in the zoo. If you dare this man to do something, he may damn well do it. And as we piled into our friend's car, one of the lads went ahead and dared Kujo to run back in and get himself some hobo pills. It's not every day that Kujo is challenged to effectively commit suicide, and he's the type of man that'll headbutt a wall just to see why kids love the taste of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, so before we knew it, he had charged dick first back into the building. One of the boys proceeded to fire up the car in preparation to ditch his dumbass, as any good friend would do, but we sat and waited and waited and waited. Maybe Kujo was knitting a sweater. Maybe he was applying for a bank loan. Or maybe he was fucking dead. I was about to pull out a magic 8-ball and ask whether or not we should cut our losses and forget we ever knew him, when Kujo unceremoniously burst from the building, screaming his lungs out like his balls were caught in a vice. We'd driven halfway down the block by the time he caught up with us, and as he dove into the back seat, it was clear that he still had all of his internal organs. Furthermore, in his hand was a tiny orange bottle containing a handful of suspicious white pills. We arrived at Kujo's house and gathered around the kitchen table to examine the substance we had purloined. With bated breath, we emptied out the contents of the dubious vial. The pills were white, circular, and had letters engraved on them. The letters read, Tums. We had stolen a hobo's Tums. Now, looking back on this odd chain of events, I kind of feel bad about it, and I was tempted to go back and leave him a full bottle of Tums, but alas, the building had been torn down. I had never once laid eyes on the wayward vagrant. He truly was an enigma, and I hadn't the faintest idea where he may have roamed off to next, but wherever he is, Godspeed, you cobra-chugging maniac. So that was the story of the legendary Hobo Nest. Feel free to swing a like my way if you found it amusing. And, my friends and colleagues, I bid you all a fond farewell.